The Challenge All-Stars, Real World versus Road Rules. How good would that be? Let's go back to the roots. Let's do with the Challenge All-Stars what we always should have done and take it back to the OG of OG formats. Real World versus Road Rules. I'm going to tell you why that should be the next season of the Challenge All-Stars. And of course, I will make it easy on production and I will fantasy cast not one, not two, not even three, but four, plus a bunch of other names just for fun to say, different versions of what the Challenge All-Stars Real World versus Road Rules cast could be, should be, will hopefully maybe be sometime in the future. That's all coming up right now. The Challenge, the show we all know and love and have for 2.5+ decades at this point, it began as one simple thing: Real World versus Road Rules. Season 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. That's 6 of the first 8. 6 of the first 7, we'll come back to that, all were Real World versus Road Rules. That's what the show was before it morphed into 1,000 different things and 1,000 different iterations, all of which we have enjoyed, many of which we have absolutely adored and loved. But that OG version we haven't seen in so long. Now, back to the 6 out of 7. Obviously, Road Rules All-Stars is now season 1 of the Challenge, but it wasn't always considered that. It was one of a couple pieces that were the impetus for what would become now season 2, the Challenge Real World versus Road Rules. That was, though, video evidence. I forget if it's season 3, 4, 5. There is video evidence where they do a flashback and they literally label footage from now season 2 as season 1. So at some point it was. So in a way, 6 of the first 7. And really, when season 6 and 9 were Battle of the Sexes, you almost went the full first decade. It wasn't until Inferno 2, season 10, that they really deviated for the first true time away from Real World versus Road Rules format. So this is how the show began. This was almost its own thing. 6 seasons worth. That's a franchise for more seasons than a lot of different reality competition franchises that have come and gone in the years since have had. So it's kind of its own little franchise. And even as they stopped using it as a format, they were still, as long as Road Rules was going, which was a little bit longer, trying to bring in equal rookies from both worlds. And even after that dissipated and it became just fresh meat editions or Real World editions for a long time, and there were no new Road Rules editions to be made, the rivalry between the shows did exist. It existed in those 6 seasons where it was one versus the other, and it existed for a long time into the teens, even the 20s of the show, between the two shows of which was better, which produced better cast members, which could produce better competitors, the whole thing. It is the bedrock of this franchise and this show that we all love. Real World versus Road Rules. Now, All-Stars, the Challenge All-Stars, started, 4-ish years ago now, whenever it was. It started as the We Want OGs movement. And season 1 was the hit that it was because it delivered on that specific promise of mostly the oldest players possible returning from the earliest seasons possible. But even with that, even though season 1 of the Challenge All-Stars delivered for the most part on a bunch of absolute OGs from the earliest days of the show coming back and trying their hand at this again way later, they put them into a modern format of the challenge. They only did one single daily challenge where it was 2 teams. Now, it was the first one. And if you go back and watch the first episode of the Challenge All-Stars 1, there is a reason it hits so unbelievably hard. It is obviously all these new OGs. It's this new format. We're so excited. I can't believe this turned into a real thing. It's here. But I dare say it is also because that first daily challenge in that first episode is 2 teams. It's not Real World versus Road Rules. It's split up just kind of haphazard. I think they draft or they pick just for the day, whatever. And it's the only team one we see, I think, the rest of that season. But it adds to it to be like it's OGs playing an OG game for one episode at least, and then it does turn into the new school game. And increasingly over the All-Star season, it becomes more middle school and new school players involved and stays a very new school game until very recently. All-Stars Rivals. Season 5 of All-Stars has lit a fire in the fan base that we have not really seen since probably All-Stars 1 when that came about, or War of the Worlds 1 and 2. Like those areas are really the last time we have seen this kind of fervor, this kind of excitement, this kind of enjoyment from the fan base. Not counting Challenge Australia. If you were watching live like me and like 12 other people here in the States, that got us equally as excited, but I digress. As much as it's been the cast of this season of All-Stars 5, the specific actions they're taking, the gameplay, the whole thing, the whole package has been fantastic. It really is at its root because they brought back the best format in show history. They casted accordingly and all of that. But it's because it's Rivals, and they brought in Rivals, and it's the best format, and it makes for the best possible outcomes, and we're getting a lot of that now. But Rivals format isn't some super old format. It's from the 20s of the show. It's still the second half of the show. So I say, let's seize the momentum that the franchise currently has, and let's keep bringing beloved themes and format back to the show. I think the flagship should focus on a few of the more successful themes from the teens and the 20s of the show. If we also want to bring X's back, great. I think that should be on the flagship. If we want to do a War of the Worlds style again, okay. If we want to do some sort of invasion or another rival season, because there's enough out there, we could probably keep doing them. Any of that, bring back on the flagship, which, side note, from the sounds of it, no spoilers, but season 41, it seems is maybe leaning towards doing the opposite. But I'm going to choose to get upset about that another day. So All-Stars, instead, the flagship should do a little bit more of the modern themes we love. All-Stars, I think, should go all the way back. I've wanted this to be the case since season 1. When season 1 was announced, I was dying for it to be Real World versus Road Rules. I thought we would have gotten it by now. If you would have told me then we've done 5 seasons of Challenge All-Stars in quick succession, of course we have eventually done even if it wasn't the first season, we would have done Real World versus Road Rules by now, right? And I think the fans, because we've seen glimpses, be it on an All-Star season with a daily challenge here or there in teams, or on a flagship season when they worked as teams on a couple of the recent seasons briefly during different portions of the season, I think fans are ready and kind of almost clamoring for, give us 2 teams and make it simple. Like let's let the cast members breathe. Let's let the show and the drama breathe more than just the gameplay and who's going to ultimately win or anything like that. And then amongst all of this, all of these thoughts, the Godfather himself, Mark Long, has made it very clear recently where he stands when he tweeted out that he has always, and essentially will always, want Real World versus Road Rules to happen on All-Stars. And when I saw him tweet about that, I think it was about a week ago now here, I was like, I've been thinking of that myself the whole time. I think fans would love it. I think we should do it. And I thought, well, let's help production out. Let's show them how easy it would be to cast a Real World vs. Road Rules season of All-Stars and hopefully maybe help convince them that this should be the move for All-Stars 6. So let's do just that. Before we can do the actual casting, though, this will just take a moment, I promise. We're getting to the names. Just for the sake of knowing what we're placing these people into, this would be the setup I would use for the Challenge All-Stars Real World vs. Road Rules season that they should absolutely do for All-Star 6. 2 teams, duh, that's the whole thing we're talking about here, Road Rules versus Real World. 12 players on each team, 24 cast members total, 6 women, 6 men on both teams, $300,000 on the line, split up as such. There should be an opening daily challenge worth $20,000 to the winner's team bank account. No one goes home on this. So we get one episode where a bunch of people are playing for 20 grand on their teams. And then we get to, have a night or two of fun and shenanigans at the house before anyone has to go home. That works unbelievably well for the show to not send anyone home the first episode. Then that opening daily, which is worth 20K, would be followed by 8 proper daily challenge followed by elimination rounds. Each of those 8 daily challenge would be worth 10K to the team's bank account. So we're not only bringing back Real World versus Road Rules, we're bringing back the team bank account and the daily challenges being how you accrue that money so that those teams want to be winning those dailies. So opening daily for 20K, 8 following dailies for 10K each, which each are followed by elimination. The final challenge then, whoever's left for both teams, run a final for $200,000 to the winner. Both teams have to finish the final to get what is in their team's bank account. That is a total $300,000 on the line. This would make for a perfect, nice, neat 10-episode season. It takes 21 days to film, plus a day or two on either side for just, logistics, interviews, getting in and out, all of that good stuff. It should be filmed on a beach in Mexico with 2 houses, one for both teams right next to each other, wherever you can find that, anywhere on a beach in Mexico. Do that. And you would alternate men's and women's days where the opposite team is picking who is going in for your team. So Road Rules is picking a male or female from Real World to go in. Real World is doing the same from Road Rules. They are presenting their choices to each other the same as if, they did back. It was either Inferno 1 or 2 or both. And, presenting to each other, this is who we've chosen. There is no lifesavers here. There's no double dailies, anything like that to be able to save yourself. Everyone is up with the exclusion of you can't pick the same person back-to-back times. So you can't put poor Katie Cooley in more than you could put her in every other if she wins, but you can't put her in back-to-back, or anyone for that matter, back-to-back times. I think this works. It's super simple. It is based completely around the OG version of the game, the Real World vs. Road Rules version of the game, and it leaves us with 24 slots to fill as far as cast. So now to the teams. I'm going to give you 4 iterations of these teams just to show casting how easy this is, okay? Because it's super easy, it's super doable, it's beyond super doable. We could have this start literally next week if we wanted to, okay? I'm going to do 4 plus some names because I want to show how fun it could be, depending what way you went with it, who you were calling, who maybe was willing to say yes. So here's the lists I'm going to give you. The first one, I'm going to tell you the fantasy cast for as OG as possible. If we limited this, I was wanting to limit it to you debuted on the first 5 seasons of the show, but I had to cheat a little bit more. So first 6 seasons of the show. You debuted on first 6 seasons. OG is possible. The most OG ever possible season of the Challenge All-Stars. That's the first one I'll do. Second one I'll do as star-studded as possible with only Era 1 folks. Folks from seasons 1 through 10 or debuted on seasons 1 through 10, same as they did for Battle of the Eras, using those eras. So as star-studded as possible, Era 1 only. The third list I'm going to give you, as star-studded as possible if Eras 1 and 2 are both allowed to be called, which is truly the star-studded all-star season of all-star seasons. And then the fourth one, just to prove the point of how easy this would be, I am going to give you the cast that I am calling so realistic, I think you could start filming next week, because you literally could. Everyone on this has said yes to a previous All-Star season and is itching and ready to go for another one. So those are the 4 I'm going to give you. And then after all of that, I will also give a 5th, not fantasy cast, but a bunch of names of fun old cast members who didn't fit into one of my first 4 versions that I just deserve. They deserve a shout out. They deserve a call out, and they deserve an availability call. Hey, what are you up to? You work out a little bit at all? You interested in being on TV again? What's your story? They deserve a call. So that's what we've got. Here we go. Fantasy cast number 1, starting with as OG as possible. Again, this is only folks, if they wanted to do the most OG season of the Challenge Real World, if they really wanted to maximize the original promise of We Want OGs, they would do the original format, Real World versus Road Rules, with the most OG of OGs possible, all having debuted on the first 6 seasons, essentially really 5 plus one person that we had to cheat there that was on the first 6. So, Team Real World, The women would be Cynthia Roberts from Real World Miami, Beth from Real World Los Angeles, Julie from Real World New Orleans, Anissa from Real World Chicago, Ruthie from Real World Hawaii, and Kelly from Real World New Orleans. That Kelly would be the one. Obviously, Kelly and Julie both here. The other 4 women I've named have done an all-star season before. I'm guessing would be willing to do another. Julie and Kelly both did Real World Homecoming and have both been a little more kind of in the ether. Kelly especially only ever did one season of the challenge, but she was great in that one season and was great on Real World Homecoming and has been very active and like kind of talking about the reality TV world since then. So I think she would do that. I think this 6 women for Team Real World would be very realistic. On the men's side, John Brennan, Real World Los Angeles, Eric Neese, Real World New York, Tech, Real World Hawaii, Cyrus from Boston, Dan Renzi from Real World Miami, and Jamie Murray from New Orleans. Again, the 3 on the Tech and Cyrus have been on an all-star season. Dan Renzi has been an alternate for an all-star season. Those 3, I think, definitely say yes. John Brennan has been dying to get on this show, get a shot. He definitely will say yes. Jamie Murray, I think, would say yes. He's done a couple Challenge Manias since Real World Homecoming. I think he's in that camp. And then Eric Neese would be the one actual wild card here that I don't know if we're convincing him to do it, but he's got to be on this list, okay? They would be going up against Team Road Rules. On the women's side, Ronnie, Road Rules Northern Trail. We're on Team Road Rules here. Jacob, get together. This is the first of 4 fantasy casts. I got to lock in here. Veronica, of course, would be there. Holly Shand from Latin America. Emily Bailey from Second Adventure. Susie from Down Under. Tara from Northern Trail. And then on the men's side, Mark Long, of course, Kifla from Down Under, yes, Semester at Sea, Dan Setzler, Northern Trail, Letarian, Max Velocity Tour, and James Orlando, Max Velocity Tour. Now on these lists, a bunch of folks, similar to the Real World side, have done All-Star season. About half of these lists here have done a season, less than half. Ronnie and Veronica both have on the women's side. Mark, Kifla, yes, and Letarian have. So actually, yeah, half, nailed it. Wow, doing good here. And the other half, a few are known. Tara has said she would do this. She is publicly stated that via social media, I believe. Susie, obviously, icon, I think would do it. And it was, attempting to do All-Stars 4 and 5, and it just didn't quite ever, the deal was never quite closed. And assuming in this iteration right here, there is no Johnny Bananas, that may be a deal breaker, or maybe won't be a deal breaker. Who knows if that ever matters for real in the future, but Susie, I think, would definitely do it. And on the men's side, I know Dan Setzler would be down and would be ready to do it. James Orlando is the wild card. I want to see it. I need to see it. I have no idea what he's up to, who he is as a person anymore these days. But assuming he's available and willing, he would have to be on that list. So this is your as OG as possible. Again, all these folks debuted by season 5 or 6 at the absolute latest. And I'm forgetting, even looking back at these lists, who it was that I had to go to season 6 to get to. I think these actually all debuted on season 5 or earlier, because almost all these people were on Battle of the Seasons, season 5. So this is as OG as possible. This would be the coolest thing in the world. Would it light the fandom on fire? Really, really move the ball forward for the franchise as a whole? No, it would be a more of just a modest hit, a pure nostalgia play. But I mean, who wouldn't? OG Challenge fans, even if you weren't watching at the very beginning when all these people first competed, if you're a true OG fan and you picked up sometime in the first 10 to 15 seasons of the challenge, you dove in and you've been with ever since, you probably went back and watched these seasons. You probably have the files saved somewhere on your computer that you got off Reddit or Facebook or somewhere, and you love all these people. And the original idea, the We Want OGs movement, was driven by the idea of something like this. So that's option 1. Let's go, though, to option 2 and 3, the star-studded options. Fantasy cast number 2, Real World vs. Road Rules Challenge All-Stars, is star power to the max if only Era 1 is involved. And now the original thinking for this would be, if they really did this, they would obviously, like any season, the more big-name, star-level type people you bring back into the fold, the better, more than less for the season. As long as they make sense as a cast together, there needs to be that cohesion, but especially in an all-stars format, bringing people back There's a little less of that and a little more of just like, give me the big names, give me the people I'm dying to see again on my television screen. And originally, why I split this into two different lists that are going to be very similar is because I kind of wanted to do the one of only folks from Era 1, essentially folks who did a season of Real World versus Road Rules at some point, or at the very, very least. I think almost everyone on this list fits that except for one or two. And those people did multiple team seasons, if it might have just been good guys versus badasses or vets versus rookies or what have you, as the teams changed up through the teens of the show. So star power to the max. Any Era 1, anyone that debuted in Era 1 is available for this fantasy cast. And again, all of these fantasy casts, I think, are very, very doable and could be cast in no problem. This isn't some dream scenario. I know you're already screaming that I've left out some key names in that first list. I will come around to the dream scenario names at the very end and why they weren't included here, because they're dreams and they're never going to happen. Team Real World, star power to the max. Anyone from Era 1 eligible. Team Real World, the women. A lot of these are going to be repeat, one cast to the other. Some names will be new. The women for Team Real World: Beth, Julie, Anissa, Ruthie, Trishelle, and Jamie Chung from Real World San Diego. And on the men's side, Tech, Cyrus, Jamie Murray, Alton, CT, and Brad. Okay, this list, we went over some of these names in the first list. We don't have to go back. Trishelle and Jamie would be the new women on Team Real World. Trishelle's done All-Stars before, done other shows. I think she would happily be willing. Jamie Chung has a great career in Hollywood. Would she be willing to come do one season of this? I think so, if it's a 21-day shoot and it's a bunch of old friends that she would been on the show with and it's this format and the whole thing. I think you could convince her. Maybe not. Maybe that's wishful thinking. On the men's side, obviously, Brad and CT are very willing to do these shows. I'm sure CT would love to do an all-star season with a shorter shoot and a bunch of his old pals, and Alton has done a season as well. So these are very realistic 12 names for Team Real World that are absolute, as star-studded really as you could pull from Era 1. Again, Beth, Julie, Anissa, Ruthie, Trishelle, Jamie, Tech, Cyrus, Jamie, Alton, CT, and Brad. They would be facing Team Road Rules. The women: Veronica, of course, Susie, of course, Rachel Robinson, of course, Katie, of course, Tina, of course, and Jody, of course. That would be the best 6-person grouping we could possibly make for any of these teams, for any of these versions. You will be seeing this exact women's side of Team Road Rules again in the very near future. On the men's side, Mark Long, Yes Duffy, Shane Landrum, Abram Boise, Darrell Taylor, Derek Kaczynski. None of this really needs explanation besides Abram. I think they would be okay bringing him back. There's some off-the-show things that weren't necessarily the reason he stopped being casted. He just, got older and decided to have a different life. But there is known between he and Challenge cast members off the show things that are out there, and maybe they wouldn't want to bring him back. Maybe the other casts wouldn't, but as someone who follows him, he's no longer doing pyrotechnics for the Taylor Swift Eras Tour, which was what he had been doing the last 2 or 3 years, and is amazing. But that is over, and he's an artist, and he seems like it would be a very interesting guy to bring back, and obviously was an absolute star of the early days of the show. Darrell, Shane, yes, Mark, they've all done seasons. They, of course, would do it. And Derek, of course, same boat there. So pretty self-explanatory. That would be Era 1 only, star-studded Road Rules versus Real World. Now, let's talk if we allowed some Era 2 folks in there, would these teams change at all? And again, the reason why I wanted to do 2 versions is because I liked the idea of give me all the stars, but the ones that did team seasons and that maybe even all did a Real World versus Road Rules season. But if we open it up to Era 2, because it still feels like, as we're not doing real, we're not bringing Jordan into this. We're not even I didn't even allow John A onto this list, even 2-time All-Stars champ, because technically Era 3, we still want to keep this as close to OGs as possible. But Era 2 folks, most of them did some team seasons. Most of them still, as old as the show is, as many seasons of the show as we've done, feel like OGs. And especially when, the first couple seasons of All-Stars, we didn't blink at Era 2 people being involved. We started blinking when Era 3 people were involved. When we watched the challenge battle of the eras, there felt like a very clear delineation between Era 1 and 2's over here, 3 and 4's over here. They're kind of two different worlds. And so I just thought, for the sake of really driving home to production how insane of a season you could have, and really let the stars of the early half of your franchise shine by this simple team format, I wanted to show them what was possible. So these are going to be very similar to what we just went through, but there are some notable and big, heavy-hitting differences here. Team Real World, the women, Ruthie, Kellyanne, Anissa, Jen, Sarah, and Emily. So obviously Emily Schramm, Real World DC, Sarah Rice, Real World Brooklyn, Jen Grijalva, Real World Denver, and Kellyanne Judd, Real World Sydney, join Anissa and Ruthie, I think, as the most realistic, the most interesting, and the most star-studded team Real World we could amass on the women's side from Era 1 and Era 2. Would be unbelievable dynamics at play with this team and a lot of good competitors. And then on the men's side, they would be joined by Brad, CT, Wes, Johnny Bananas, Cyrus, and Alton. Now, all of these people would say yes in a heartbeat. Of course, even Wes, if you told him this was what was going down, he would say yes in a heartbeat, especially in 21 days. He'd be fine with it. Johnny being there, obviously the Sarah and Susie's coming up on this list. Would they do it? Would they not? I don't know. That's one little hiccup. If you want to say this isn't realistic, I think they would do it. So I'm still putting this in the bounds of realism. And this team just in general would be unbelievable. I mean, Ruthie, Kellyanne, Anissa, Jen, Sarah, Emily, Brad, CT, West, Johnny, Cyrus, Alton. Unreal, as would be the team they would be going up against. Team Road Rules. Now stop me if you've heard the women's side before, because obviously with Team Road Rules, isn't as many Era 2 debuts for Team Road Rules. Almost none to add to this list. In fact, it's the same team as before. Veronica, Susie, Rachel, Katie, Tina, Jody, Mark, yes, Shane, Abram, Darrell, and Derek. It's still just as good as the last time I read that list out loud to you a few minutes ago. It's still amazing. It's still star-studded, and it can still absolutely compete. And I would be mesmerized by the dynamics of these two teams going against each other and the relationships across the board, across the two teams that would be at play. Unreal stuff. I would love this. This would be the one. If this was the season, if they put out a trailer tomorrow, or not even a trailer, if Gamer and Pink Rose tweeted out tomorrow, hey, they just left to film All-Star 6. Here's the 24 people. Challenge fans wouldn't do a single other thing from that moment until we got to watch this thing, whatever, 6, 8, 10 months later. Wouldn't do a single other thing. Our jobs would be, none of us would have jobs. None of us would have family. None of us would have friends. We would simply just be sitting on the edge of our seat, waiting to watch this season with this cast in this format. It'd be unbelievable. So that's what they should do. That is, of course, what they should do. They should go for the biggest, absolute best and deliver what could easily be delivered. This is still, again, very realistic. The only thing on this list that is unrealistic about these 24 names would have to be is Abram, who I can find you some easy replacements, no problem. And if Susie and Sarah would be down, if Johnny was going to be there, I think they would. If not, we can find a single. The Real World women is actually the hardest one to find the easy replacements, but I had just done it. No problem. We'll revert back to Jamie or Trishelle or Beth or Julie or whoever I left out the second time around. And that's really it. Everyone else is doing seasons, is happy to keep doing seasons, and it would just be absolutely unreal. But just in case production hasn't been convinced and they're seems like we got to make a lot of calls, or yeah, that sounds great, all these big names, but we got to pay a lot of those people a ton of money. Well, you should, first and foremost, you just should. But if you were we need this is a good idea, Jacob, thank you for bringing it to our attention. Thank you for fantasy casting it out, not 1, but 2, but 3 times, but we need a 4th. We need to know, we need this to be efficient and easy and still be good, still be a hit, but we just need the easiest road possible to making this happen. I've got you. The most realistic, still be awesome, but it could happen next week list. Here we go. This 4th and final list does follow basically all the rules of before. It's Era 1 and 2 with the slightest dip for who I mentioned earlier, John A, technically Era 3, but I have added her here. The slightest dip, one person into Era 3, but still is mostly Era 1, some Era 2, and that one Era 3 person on all who had done seasons, team seasons. And the most important here, the real stipulation to make this the most realistic and could guarantee that they could do this and they could start shooting as soon as they wanted to, is all of these people have done All-Stars once before and have done Challenge Mania events or the podcast circuit, have in some way, shape, or form indicated that that wasn't the last time they were willing to do reality television, that they would be open to doing more seasons of the challenge. So let's go Team Road Rules first, because, one time here, we got to let them go first. Team Road Rules for the most realistic start shooting next week possible version of the All-Stars Real World versus Road Rules. We've got Kendall, Katie, Rachel, Tina, Jody, and Veronica. Still that super team that we've been riding with. We've swapped in Kendall for one spot there, mostly just to swap in a new person for one spot on that list. On the men's side, yes, Darrell, Mark, Derek, Steve, and Shane all would be good. There's a bunch of other names we could add. I will get to them in a moment. Team Real World, Ruthie, Anissa, Cynthia, Kellyanne, Trishelle, John A, Alton, Nehemiah, Tech, Cyrus, Brad, MJ. Again, a great list. I would be very into this season. I would be more into the idea of the format of the season than the cast itself, but I would still be excited by this cast. And I know all these people would say yes in a heartbeat because they have once or twice or even 3 times for some of them 2 All-Star seasons or 2 recent flagship seasons, and they're all ready to do it again. Finally, no more versions of it, but some names that I'd be remiss if I did not shout out, because there was a lot of names I could have included on a bunch of these different lists. There's a lot of names and people I would call for availability for a Real World vs. Road Rules season of the Challenge All-Stars, or just for any season of the Challenge All-Stars, because I think it would be interesting to bring them back. On the Real World side of things, Montana from Real World Boston, Nathan from Seattle, David from Seattle, one of my all-time favorites, David Burns, Norm from New York, Randy Berry from San Diego. I always loved Randy. Frank from Las Vegas, a season MVP, Frank Rossler. Danny, dare I say, Danny Jameson from Real World Austin. Dunbar, dare I say, from Real World Sydney. All of them would be great to call and bring into this or any All-Star season. On the Road Rules side, of course, Timmy, I'm not putting on the dream list that we will close things out with here, because I think there is a smidge of hope. He's done 1 or even 2 Challenge Manias, and it's at least out there in the ether that there's a shot. There's the slimmest of shots. Kara Zavaleta from South Pacific, definitely need to give her an availability call. Sarah Grayson, I really wanted to put on the star-studded list. I think it would be incredible if we brought her back for a one-off to, follow up on the one-off, maybe greatest season ever that she had back on the Gauntlet. Keena from Extreme definitely needs a call. Abise has been talking challenge for years on her Instagram, would definitely come to a season. And then Jillian, speaking of Frank, we also got to have Jillian come back from Road Rules Extreme. Then there's the list of people you could fill in, especially on that 4th version, the very realistic. There's a bunch of people who have done All-Stars at least once already and would be an easy call to do it again. You could fill them in to replace anyone that doesn't say yes on any of my first 4 lists, whether it's Ronnie, Adam, Kendall. Oh, Kendall was on one of them. I think Ronnie was too. Ayana, if is all good post cancer battle, she's back in fighting shape. Yesella, Letarian, Tyler Duckworth, my second favorite challenge cast member of all time. Ace, the list goes on. There's a lot of people who've done All-Stars that you could call back to fill in this. And then, of course, there are the dreams that aren't going to happen, but we got to say them because you've been wondering this whole time, how have you not said Landon or Coral or The Miz or Theo or Paula? Those 5 are the true dream scenario. Theo Von's never going to do this in a million years. I think The Miz is realistic and is almost guaranteed that one day he will make an appearance, not be on the show, but make some appearance. We can hope that it would be like as a mercenary, but I think he will, maybe a video in, something. Maybe he'll Zoom call with Mark Long during a season, something. I think we will see The Miz very briefly someday on our challenge screens, but not as an actual cast member. Coral, Mark likes to tease it. He's teased it that he's talked to her, but I still don't think it's ever going to happen. And Landon also, is at least we've gotten him at a couple challenge manias. We've heard he's out and about there. I still am leaving him on the dream list because I don't dare actually start to wonder if that is a realistic. So Landon, Coral, Miz, Theo, and Paula. And Paula, of course, one of my all-time favorites, one of the all-time best that doesn't get credit for being as such. I do not believe has any interest in returning because of the life changes she made post the challenge that wants to keep in place. And I respect and love her for that. So there you have it. So many possibilities, so easily done, and would be such an absolute monster of a hit season for the Challenge All-Stars. And judging by the early rumblings, I'll bring it up one more time, no spoilers, but the early rumblings from Flagship 41 are that we might need another giant All-Stars season to pick up the slack here in the near future. So we need this. The Challenge All-Stars, Real World versus Road Rules. Take us back all the way to the roots. I am begging you, Bunim Murray, MTV, CBS, Viacom, Paramount, whoever the hell owns Paramount anymore these days, if they've Skydance, whoever bought Paramount, if that's actually gone through, please give us this. Mark Long, thank you for being out there fighting the good fight. As always, the champion, the godfather of this whole thing for damn good reason. Comment below with your best Real World versus Road Rules teams. What mix and match would you want to see? Who did I not say that you think should be there? With quick reminder, there's probably a bunch of names that you're going to be like, why not these? They're fresh meat. Our fresh meat casts are amazing, but they're fresh meat. They don't count as Real World or Road Rules, so I didn't involve any of them in any of these casts. That's why. So don't do that. But comment your best Real World versus Road Rules teams. If you would like to see this format return or not, if you're one of the people who'd be like, actually, I don't think that would be fun. I think that would be boring. Let me know. Do it respectfully. If you prefer a different old format be brought back, let me know. Maybe I can fantasy cast that for you. Or if you just, think that I'm really cool or awesome or want to say nice words and boost my ego, I would take that too. Feel free. Comment below. If you're listening on Spotify, I think you can leave comments now. That's pretty cool. Don't think you can on Apple. But yeah, get in touch. Comments. As always, Instagram at Challenge Historian. If you want to message there, I will happily talk challenge with you any day of the week. Thank you so much for watching. All-Star Rivals recaps will continue this Wednesday night. Until then, peace.